We are delighted to have you with us today for another exciting episode of the Nonprofit Show. But this is one of our special segments called the Nonprofit Thought Leader. These are people that we've identified who've been on our show before, that we really liked what they had to say, or we just were so amazed by the thought, literally the thought leadership that they brought to us. So Sasha Lewis is one of those people. And I have to tell the story that when you first came to us, it was in the very beginning of the Corona Chronicles. And one of the things that you said to Jarrett and I was, for all of us in the dealing with COVID and this lockdown, you just got an extra 30 minutes in terms of commuting time. If you're still having to work from home, don't waste that time. Spend that time on your database. And we were like, mind blown. That's been a long journey. And from there, look at all these sponsors we have that have come to join us. And now the Nonprofit Show, we're reaching out towards 200 episodes. And you were one of those people that really made, I think, Jarrett and I realize that there are some long-term things that we need to be talking about, COVID or not, right?
Well, so. I appreciate this, and congratulations on the show's success and growth over the last few months. It's been amazing. But as we get into talking about, the topic at hand today, it is something I think that's really important because, we're an amazing industry that has a lot to offer. And I think this area is the thing that is going to allow us to really do more for our missions and do more for the individuals that we serve as both clients or consumers or our donors as well. So looking forward to digging in a little bit more here shortly.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. Well, again, I'm Julia Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. Jarrett Ransom, the nonprofit nerd and CEO of the Raven Group's not with us today. She's working with a client. But here is Sasha Lewis's information. Principal of Moves Management and Consulting, movesmc.com. Check her out, but more importantly, buckle up because this is going to be a really interesting discussion. And we are thrilled to have you here as one of our thought leaders. So I've got to start with the title of this show, Why Your Database is Sleep. And I was like, when we first started talking about this, I was like, this is something that we don't say in public, but anybody that has to work with the database says this privately or gets super, super frustrated. And so that's what I love about you, Sasha, and how you're going to help us navigate through some of this. Okay, so start us off. This was like a mind blower. Donor data versus accounting data? What does that mean?
Absolutely, Julius. Two different things, but in the joy of my career and the time that I've worked with clients, it has not mattered which database we're in or whether it's a young organization or a very mature organization. I've identified that this is the root issue that I am helping them address. This is the one thing that we are challenged with that is causing astronomical problems throughout the organization, and that is misunderstanding what data belongs in the gift record from an accounting versus a donor development standpoint. And the first thing that I wind up doing with my clients is really kind of unraveling what that means for the organization, taking it apart and really asking them, well, what did you mean by this? And what did you mean by that? And what I recognize is, these organizations have put a lot of these solutions or Band-Aid solutions in place because they're truly trying to figure out a way to do this correctly. But because they haven't addressed what was already inherited as a problem, they're still just putting more and more problems on top of problems instead of creating an actual solution. Yeah. So the issue really boils down to its accounting data versus development data. And today we're going to kind of help, we are going to help you as an audience understand what those pieces are, what kind of the roles of each one of these spots in your database is, and how that's going to make an astronomical impact on what you do. So please slow me down, Julia, if I, any points of clarity along this way, but I'd like to just jump in and get to the heart of the conversation.
I mean, I'm really amazed because I can see in my own trajectory that what you're saying is absolutely true, but I've never identified it as two different things. And that's like, to me, Sasha, that's a huge wake-up call for us.
I think this could transform how the industry is looking at their data and provide a lot of clarity, especially to your development team versus your accounting team, and address what we all know and don't talk about is the inherent conflicts that exist between those two. Let's be honest, this has not been, those relationships often between development and accounting can be very strained because they're each trying to get the information they want, but without the capacity to do so. So part of that really boils down to where data is going in your database and how it's being used. So every donor database, whether it's Razor's Edge, Bloomerang, Virtuous, Salesforce, they all have a concept called a fund or a project. This is the main gift code or place that you store in your donor database for where you ask your donors to support. It's your area of greatest need. It's your unrestricted funds. It's the events that you are soliciting donations for. It's the programs that you're soliciting donations for. And what I find most often is this fund/project code, whatever your CRM is using, has everything in it that does not belong. It'll have, if you have a fund or a project that says individual, corporation, foundation, you've already got major problems. If you have a fund or a project code that says lapsed donor, major gift, you've got major problems because those are not funds and projects that your mission is serving and doing. Those are strategies or appeals or segments. And so when you're trying to put stuff together, you've got this data in the wrong place. So what we first have to identify for the organization is what really are the funds or projects that we are raising money for, because those are a direct tie to accounting. And that's actually the bridge that we'll talk about a little bit, is the fund/project codes are typically the only thing development and accounting really share in common in an interest. And to be honest, most of the time your accounting department does not care about those codes. Development does. So that's kind of the big thing, is understanding what your role of your project is. Every database also has the ability to track appeals and segments or the strategies in which you're raising these dollars for. And so we need to make sure that as we're digging into your database and go in and look at what, that segment is called in your system, and look at the type of data that's in there. That is where you need to have direct mail, fall direct mail, online gifts, honor memorials. That's where you talk about where you create budgets for your revenue goals for your donor or for your annual fundraising program. So again, we've got project funds as what we're raising money for, our appeals, segments, those types of things are the how we're raising money for. And then many systems have another level called campaign, and that honestly can be used in a lot of ways. Sometimes it just groups things together for the fiscal year. So I'm going to leave campaign alone for the moment because it has a lot more flexibility. But again, fund projects, I'm going to keep going over because I want to reiterate how important these are, because you need to ask every time you're creating one, what am I using this purpose for? Funds and projects are the things you're raising money for. Appeals are the segment and strategies. And these are very, very important. As I mentioned, development cares first and foremost about those, projects or the funds and the appeals and how they're doing that. But we're still struggling with what do we do next and what really is it that accounting matters. And so as we transition into that same data, different priorities, we can start talking a little bit more as to what that means. So again, hoping I'm not going too fast, I'm visualizing a gift record in my head. But as you think about the gift record of what it looks like and how it's structured, there's still this big need that accounting comes up. And so when you're dealing with the budgets and goals, we all have these classifications of we need to raise X much money in an individual classification, in the corporation classification, in the foundation classification. And these classifications really aren't about development. That's where accounting steps in. Those are classifications, and I'm not an accountant, so for the accountants on board, I apologize if my terminology is slightly off and correct anything that I misspeak, but this is how I understand when it connects to the donor database. But how the accountants, they have to follow the general accepted accounting practices.
Yeah, right.
They are required to classify gifts into those codings. That's what they care about first and foremost. And so you often see the fund or the projects get coded as individual or corporation or foundation, and that doesn't help us. And so we have a problem because now we have two different data needs kind of buried in the same spot. And then a lot of, if not all of my organizations and clients take that appeal data or the strategy, and they also embed it in the project or fund code. So now you have three different types of data all being housed in one code, and everybody going, well, I can't get what I need.
Right.
Why? This is why your database is bleep.
Sasha, it's really interesting. I would love to know the number of organizations that have, embarked upon a new database, a cleanup, a overhaul, whatever the heck, the percentage of those organizations at even reaching out to their accounting departments has got to be slim. And so I can see where if you're setting this up or you're going back and reinvesting in a cleanup, if you don't connect back up with that other department, yeah, big mistake.
It's a huge mistake, and we won't have time to dig into this later, but on a future discussion, I'd really like to talk about the importance why your donor database and your accounting database from a gift revenue standpoint has to have a one-to-one match. It should be reconciled every single month. We will spend 30 minutes digging into why that is no longer an acceptable excuse in our industry.
Yeah.
But that is one of those things, is if we can solve this problem, we can create the level of confidence in our donor database that we have in our accounting system. And when you do that, then you can implement moves management. Then you can implement a great major gift program. But if you can't address this issue, and you can't, without confidence and extreme confidence, give your donor a donor statement at any point in time that says exactly what they give, what they gave it to, and how, you have no business moving forward. Don't collect $200. Don't go. You stop and you do everything and you fix this, because that's what we owe to our donors first and foremost. And we've talked about this. This isn't about, our database and our accountants and our individuals, or excuse me, our fundraisers. This is about your donors, and your donors deserve better, and they deserve more, and they deserve to know that their information is being held with incredible level of accuracy and confidence. I can't tell you how many times, I'm sure you've experienced it, where you send out an annual statement at the end of the year and you have a donor calling and yelling at you. That should never happen. You should have such confidence in your information that when you send it out, you know that all you're going to get is an opportunity to do a stewardship touch point to say thank you, because people are going to know that that was done right. So, collecting myself, this is the opportunity we have at hand, is to really hone in and address these issues and address the root cause. Because when you talked about just momentarily, everybody that when they convert a database, they change it, they also don't go back and ever fix the issues. And so I just finished 20 years of recoding every gift that went into a client's database. And I can truly tell when they got a new database person. I can tell when they had a new development director, because the coding structure changes every time. Now, I can actually now, and I'm excited to show them, here's actually what you've been doing for 20 years. You've actually been doing these programs consistently, but you never knew. And so it's amazing what happens when you can start to uncover this. And so if I can jump back into, this discussion of the importance of the gap practices, the accounting practices, we need to have those individuals, the corporation, that foundation code in every single gift, but it needs to be in a separate place. We need to have a single code that's the funds, that's about what we're raising money for. So in a thank you letter, you can say, dear donor, thank you for your gift to this project or this fund. If it doesn't merge into that letter, that is probably not where it belongs. And so if it doesn't merge, you can go, oh, why not? Because you would never say, thank you for your gift to lapsed donor. I mean, it's absurd. And so that's how we know where it is. But we need to have each and every gift in your donor database have fund and project and this GL code or general ledger code that the accounting department needs. And with those two things, you typically address every single issue that an accountant department has over, we can't understand how to translate what development is saying is gift revenue and where it belongs in our system. This is the problem. This is the why. They need these codes when, frankly, we don't. Not that we don't care, but we really don't care about those in development. We care about the projects. So we need to honor both, and we need to give space for both. And there should never be a space where a gift can fall into one or more categories. These are patterns of data behavior that are, it fits one-to-one. And so we are working towards a space where we understand on our donor database side which pieces of data belong where so that we're using it accurately. And then we understand that that gift needs to have this core piece of information for your accounting department. And when you do that, every month, you can run a list of reports that says, give me all the charitable gift into this event bucket. And your accounting is going to pull the report that they're currently using. And then you actually can run that same report out of your donor database and get the exact same information. And when you start to extract and take apart and move, and you have to move it, because that's the other thing. You can't just fix it and implement it for this point moving forward, because then you can never run a report. You can never get analytical data out. You have junk still in your database and it's still bleep. You have to go back and do the painful, and it is a painful process of recoding and educating and understanding, okay, team, you meant that you were doing this. What did you really mean? Oh, okay, so let's actually move that over here. And it becomes this negotiation.
Yeah.
But when you're done with all of this, you have some very, very cleanly structured data that allows you to really look into some really heavy, higher level ROI matrix reports that we've really not even been able to address at this point.
So
there
let's
really
talk
is
about
quite
that.
a bit.
So,
Absolutely.
so let's talk about that, because I think that we do get fixated. I mean, we know that we need to have data. We know that we need to have, an ROI. And Jared is always adding, and we need ROR, return on relationship.
Yes, I love that.
The metrics part of it. But I can see it's like that old fashioned thing that and I'm dating myself, but they would teach you in computer class, garbage in, garbage out.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not starting with the right questions and the right data, you will never get the tools to work for you.
Absolutely. And truly, when you look at where the industry is going and why you have all of these amazing data tools that are emerging and cloud-based CRM systems that are doing transformative things, but you have these organizations that are excited, okay, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to buy this platform. Why is it not working for me? Well, because they designed it to work this way with this field acting or this data, area acting in this way, but you've got the wrong information there. And so the question is, these companies can only translate your data in a migration from, first name to first name or field to field. They're not going to ask you how you were really using that. And so when you start to approach, or if you're an organization that's considering a migration, before you even pick the software or solution, it's digging in and looking at, well, what do we need to fix before we migrate so that the migration actually is accurate? Because doing it after the fact is a lot of times a lot harder and a lot worse.
And that's one of the things that I remember you telling me, and this is like almost a year ago when you were first on the Corona Chronicles, and you said that the number of people you meet that they're like, oh my gosh, this software program is garbage. We need to get a whole new program. And your whole thing was, no, you need to stop. You need to take a deep breath and figure out what's not working, because chances are it's your organization has not even set it up properly. Therefore, it was kind of doomed to fail.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I was amazed by that. And I think from there, that was where we kind of crowned you with the moniker making data sexy again, because your whole concept was, you've got this information, but you need to stop and assess what you've got. And so I'm really curious about that as well. What percentage of us are just thinking that we need to throw everything out and starting over versus what we have and trying to fix it?
And that is another topic for discussion is when I would like to come back and talk about the difference between data management and data entry. We're an industry that has incredible data entry specialists that we have trained, and we've spent the years going, okay, this is an important role, but we've never given them the skills of a database that works or a database that's structured right. Their role is not to design the system. That's a different level of critical thinking. We need our data entry teams and our specialists to do the great work they're doing and to have the meticulous oversight on accuracy, on consistency. But that role is not a data manager. And that's actually a big part of what these issues are, is there's nobody sitting with their individual counterparts of those teams and asking the questions of, help me understand what you're doing in your day-to-day job. Help me understand what you need this to do so that we can identify the best place for it to go. And that's the piece that we have to do. And so we do need to spend some more time in our industry actually really starting to address a problem, and totally different subject, but a problem in our staffing diagrams. Our database specialists, our data entry individuals are typically the lowest person in your organizational chart. They're typically your lowest paid person. And you have given them the keys to the fanciest Cadillac you could possibly good and went, do you got a permit? I don't know. And then expect them to understand how to drive and navigate. And I have seen, honestly, it's been heartbreaking, a number of incredible data entry professionals get let go from an organization because, well, they can't get this report. And then I dig into it and went, they never could. And so you ask them for something that they could never produce. And because they didn't have the skill set or the training, not because they weren't capable, because it's a skill set and a training, they didn't have the language to speak back to the leadership team to say, I want to pull that lapsed donor report for you, but we never tracked it. So I never can actually pull it and tell you what it is that you're asking. Because if you don't record it, you can't report it. And so it's one of those really important things that there's so much in our industry that we have to do. And so when I look in as to why the database is bleep, it goes back to is because we don't have the thought leadership, because we've not trained it as an industry to go, what do I need this field to do? This is a fund. This is a project. Well, what does that mean? Okay, accounting, what does that mean to you? And have those difficult conversations. And I will tell you, changing this can often be a very painful process for an organization because they built these band-aid solutions, and they're built with a positive intention, but they are band-aid solutions, and they're so they hold protection over them because that's the only thing that works right. And so try to give them, individuals the confidence that no, we can still get out these board report numbers that you need to classify as individual, organization, foundation. We're just going to do it in a different way. And because we built into our new systems a monthly audit between our accounting data and our donor data, we know with confidence that works. And so we're not going to question anymore. But right now we've not built into those systems or into our processes, these systems that build that confidence, and it is hurting our industry and it's fatiguing our professionals. And I look at all these amazing development directors that I work with, and I'm going, I don't know how you plan for your organization. I don't understand how you can even project your revenues when you can't even get out of your database what you did in the last 3 years with confidence. I'm sure you can get stuff out of there, but it's not always to that level where we think about a for-profit business and how you're going to manage and check revenue streams. And it is just sometimes mind-numbing, I think is the expression, to think about what we allow in our industry because we've been this nonprofit. No, we are for-profit. It just doesn't go into our pocketbook. So to me, you and I have talked about this. I think this is the most important part of our industry is if we don't elevate how we are using these systems and how and the individuals that we are putting into the leadership roles of guiding these systems, we're going to be here in 20 years and it's not going to be any better. And there's so many cool tools at hand. Use them, people. Like, you've spent thousands, and I know how much money these organizations have spent on these tools, and they just sit there, and it makes my heart hurt.
So, it's interesting too, because I would imagine a lot of the people that are, with us live or watching one of our archive shows, they are aligned to the development department. And I'm always amazed at the number of organizations, and AFP has talked about this too. These super capable development leaders that are then, they can go out, they want them to be the face of the organization. They're meeting donors, they're meeting corporate partners, and then they're asked to come back in and then to put on like this data hat. And you can see where it's almost like a setup for failure, because you're taking people that really, in my mind, shouldn't be doing this type of work, or probably aren't going to be best suited for filling all of these these fields in. And I'm wondering, as we start to wrap up, if you could talk about that a little bit. And we've got some questions that have come in as well. But how do we know what is the right person for this type of work? Because you're talking about a lot of different layers here. And I'm wondering if maybe you could give us a little bit of insight into that.
Absolutely. And the hardest question is you need to invest in two separate positions. These are not the same position from a data entry and a data management. If you have your entire data team as one person, you are operating on just barely keeping up with the status quo. You're barely going to cover just keeping up with gift operations just to keep the donors going. So if you're an organization that's going, well, how do we start? Where do we start? You start by hiring someone that can actually lead. And the challenge in our industry is we've not cultivated this position for 20 years or 30 years. And so if you have, a data entry specialist on your team right now that is incredible, that you think is doing amazing, then find somebody to work under that individual and elevate them up and give them time. Because when I learned how to do this, and this is something that I look back and I'm glad I did, but I regret in some ways because I didn't understand, is I had a job where I did 40 hours a week of data entry. I went home, I cooked dinner with my family. At the dinner table, my laptop went to our table, and I did another 40 hours a week of data cleanup. And that's how we did the transition. And that is not an acceptable expectation for any employee, but it had to get done. I thought so because there was nobody else to do it. We need to change that mindset and start investing in these positions because they are the lifeline to your organization's efficiency I mean, the amount of money we can save when you clean up these processes and projects, the cost savings go through the roof. And so you're going, oh, we can't afford it. Oh, I'm telling you right now, you've already wasted more money than that position has already
Right.
taken.
You can't afford not to do it. I think
Exactly.
that's the way to do it. So let me get a couple of comments in here. Natalia writes, absolutely. It's about how you interpret the data and present it as it's a story. And then another, my question is about data archiving and keeping. With everything we create, what is the best way to maintain it?
So I am very passionate on you don't delete data, you don't get rid of it.
Okay.
There are very few instances where I think it's actually a good idea, because here's why. I cannot tell you the number of times I've encountered an organization where a donor 20 years ago gave a one-time $10 gift that turned around and gave $1 million estate later. And if you delete that, you lose that archive. And so what you also have now, especially if you consider upgrading to one of the new CRM systems that have a little bit more of the intuitive and analytics, if you've cleaned up your data and you start looking at that person, there's a good chance they're probably in your system elsewhere, or you can start mining some of that early people and maybe put some strategies in place. So
I love that.
I get very cautious. The only time I've ever actually deleted data out of a database is when it is a duplicate field or it's erroneous and it actually just doesn't belong. But if it has meaning, I encourage you to keep it. You just never know. You just never know.
I love it. So we have another person that's written in, and I'm not going to identify the name of the company that they're working with, but it says more of a comment, Sasha. I do data entry as one of many parts of my new job on a product base, and I'm trying to learn more about it to get the most of it. There are trainings that this company provides that I need to look into. I don't have general ledger information on the gift entry, so I'll probably have to add that. So this is really interesting. It's like what we started 30 minutes ago, that whole concept of you have donor data and information and you have accounting, and you need to understand that.
And your accounting department, I think if you are able to come with them and say, hey, I've identified and I've learned something, what do you think about that? I think you would have a whole new space for a discussion and a conversation, because now there's a common language and they're going, well, okay, maybe you finally understand what I need. Because I think that's been the challenge, is there just hasn't been a space to dig in and understand those two separate needs. And so if you don't have this, I encourage you to have a conversation with your accounting team. And dig into, what could we do? Because again, these two systems from a gift revenue standpoint, every month should be a one-to-one reconciliation without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, I love that idea. As our time is running nigh, I've got so many questions, and I know that the minute this show is over, I'm going to have even more, because you've really got me thinking about some new things. But I'm wondering if you could kind of give me an idea of, for most of us, and we can identify that there's a problem. Sometimes we don't always know what the problem is, with our data, and that's why we say it's SE. What should be something that we look at in terms of an investment of time? Is this going to be like, a 6-month cleanup, a 6-year cleanup, 60 months? And I realize this is an open-end question, depending on how many, how long you've served and what your data looks like and all that. But I'm getting the feeling that this is not a quick fix, and that we need to give ourselves some planning time. Is that right?
You do need planning time, but you need to do it with urgency, because otherwise you'll still be sitting here in a year having the same conversation going, we need to do something. So you need to have those depth conversations, and you need to have them now. And they are the ones between accounting and development of what do you need? What do I need? And then you need to put the space in play to do the work. And honestly, that is more about leadership support than the actual developer or the person doing the work, because you've got to make space for this person to do basically 2 full-time jobs that entire time. And
Right.
that's exhausting. And that is a lot of stress. So if you're expecting them to still run all of the reports, run all those things, and then transform your data, you need to buy them a cup of coffee. You need to give them an extra bonus, a day off, I don't know, or give them an additional set of help. And so there are so many things and places you can start. And I lost the point of your question, Julie. I apologize.
No, it's just about the time and investment. And I think what you just shared is that it's a journey. I know that like one of our partnering sponsors is Staffing Boutique, and we've talked with her over the years, God, it seems like years, but over the months, that, that is a place when you need that data entry, that this is a profession, that
Mm-hmm.
these are talented people that are trained, and that might be that call to bring in this outside labor source to help you so that you can navigate, more fully. And I think what you
Absolutely.
said, Sasha, is really, it hit me so much. I mean, you always say things that like blow my mind, but one of them is that investment up front is going to bring you more success and help you make better decisions. So it's not just about tracking what's coming in, it's what you're going to be producing as a nonprofit.
Absolutely. And we really didn't even get to hit into how this impacts ROI, because once you get this cleaned up, I can now run reports and go, of all of these projects, here's the strategies that we use to raise money, and here's the ones that were effective. And then we can start digging into those strategies and understand which ones are doing, what we can do A/B testing. If you're in the marketing world, you can then track your individual major gift fundraisers' success and accomplishments, and start putting projection and these other places you have called gift asks or opportunities. Once you address this, you can start kind of turning on all the other parts of the bells and whistles of the database you spent a lot of money on. And so you have to address this, because none of those other pieces work if this is not correct.
Right. Well, indeed, you have made data sexy again.
Thank you.
I love it.
It.
I'm like so amazed at how you make me think about things in a different way. And so we are thrilled that you would share some of your genius with us today. And we quote you all the time because we're always like, Sasha Lewis says this, So yeah, I love the journey and the trajectory of it, using this not as a burden, but as a real opportunity for any organization to track what is going on. And I can guarantee you that if you start doing things like this and then communicating what you're doing and your findings to funders and to donors, you're going to have much better partnership. You're going to have people that are like, this organization is efficient, they're transparent, they're running in the direction that makes sense. And so here's Sasha's information, movesmc.com. Check her out. Really interesting. We're going to have Sasha back on to talk about a lot of things. The Chronicle of Philanthropy had a really interesting article this month about how we can be very biased in how we're setting up our databases. And I can't wait to investigate that with you, just about how we input into different fields that can really become offensive culturally to different.
That's very new emerging issue. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was
absolutely
riveting. So I can't wait to have you, get into that with us, because it's amazing. Hey, presenting sponsors, without you, we would not be here. And we are very, very appreciative, as always, that you support this national conversation. This has been another great episode of the Nonprofit Show, but a special edition, Nonprofit Thought Leader with Sasha Lewis. Sasha, thank you so very much.
Truly my privilege. Thank you for allowing me to be here with you today.
It's been a lot of fun. And as we like to end every day, stay well so you can do well. We're going to see you back here tomorrow. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody.